Has this ever happened to you? You've caught his gaze, felt the intensity of his attention, and in the quiet spaces between words, you sense the weight of his desire, like an invisible thread pulling him closer. But what if I told you that the desires that draw him in are not just born of surface-level attraction? What if they are rooted in something far deeper, something far more forbidden, something that calls to the very core of his shadow? There is a primal force at play, an energy that exists beyond logic, beyond the conscious mind. It pulses in the depths of both your psyche and his. This is not the love that the world tells you to chase, nor the affection that is neatly wrapped in a predictable bow. No, this is something far darker, far more mysterious. It's the raw, untamed pull of the unconscious, the force that awakens in a man when he encounters a woman who embodies not just beauty or charm, but something more elusive. A woman who dares to be herself fully, a woman who embodies both the light and the shadow within her. The male psyche, with all its complexity, is drawn to that which he cannot tame. There's something irresistible about a woman who is not an object of possession, but rather a force unto herself. A man doesn't merely want to own her. He longs to unravel her, to understand the unknown that calls to him from the depths of her. And what does he find there? He finds his own darkness reflected in her. He finds the parts of himself he has repressed, the longings he has buried, the power he has denied. And he wants it, not out of necessity but out of the magnetic pull of the unconscious. For every man who seeks to conquer, there is a deeper, more dangerous longing that beckons from the shadows. He may chase the woman who fits his ideal, who is domesticated and docile, but the woman who walks in her own power, who knows her worth in her darkness, that woman awakens something in him that he cannot control. It's a force of nature, something that speaks to his deepest desires, the ones that are rarely spoken aloud, the ones that he keeps hidden even from himself. She does not have to perform to be desired. She simply is. Her power lies not in her ability to fulfill his expectations, but in her ability to stand apart from them. She becomes a mirror, reflecting back to him the complexity of his own soul. And in that reflection, he sees his need for growth, for transformation, for the deepening of his own inner world. But there is a trap here. For in the magnetic pull between the feminine and the masculine, the dance of attraction becomes a delicate balance. If a woman is too much, she will overwhelm him. If she is too little, she will fade into the background. The key lies in embracing the tension between light and shadow, between vulnerability and power. A woman who embodies this tension becomes a force that neither he nor the world can ignore. It is in the moments when she is silent, when she withdraws into herself, that he feels the deepest ache of desire. For the silence of a woman who knows herself is not mere absence. It is a presence all its own. It is the silence of the moon pulling the tides, of the wind moving through the trees, of the deep, endless quiet of the universe. It is not the silence of withdrawal, but the silence of self-possession. When she steps back, when she pulls her energy away, he is faced with the most dangerous thing of all, the reality that he cannot control her. And that is the key. The forbidden desire that he feels is not for the woman he can control, but for the woman who remains untamed. It is the desire to possess something that cannot be possessed, to understand something that eludes him, to embrace the unknown. This, my dear, is where true power lies. In the feminine energy that is not bound by expectations, but flows freely, like a river that cannot be dammed. It is in the acceptance of her own shadows, the willingness to confront the parts of herself that society teaches her to suppress. For when she embraces her darkness, she becomes irresistible. She becomes a force that no man, no matter how strong, can ever truly capture. And in that, she becomes something far more dangerous, far more beautiful than any ideal. Imagine what would happen if you stopped trying to conform to his desires, if you stopped performing for his approval. What if you became the woman who draws him in not through effort, but through being fully, unapologetically yourself? The woman who knows her worth, who embraces the power of her own shadow, who does not fear the silence, the distance, or the unknown. The forbidden desires that draw him to you are not about how you look or what you do. They are about who you are when you stand in your own truth, fully awake to the complexities of your soul. When you become the woman who does not chase, but who chooses, you awaken something in him that is as ancient as the stars. A man's deepest attraction to a woman lies not in her attempts to please him or to fit into the narrow molds of his desires. No, it lies in the mysterious pull of her own self-possession. It's in her ability to hold space for herself, to remain whole even when the world demands she conform. The more she reflects this truth, that she is her own person, not an object to be claimed or altered, the more deeply his unconscious is drawn to her. This is the very core of what Jung referred to when he spoke of the anima, the archetype of the feminine within the male psyche. It is this unconscious feminine force that he craves, the part of himself that he has neglected or repressed, the side that yearns to be awakened. The attraction is not based on superficial qualities or immediate pleasures. It is rooted in something far more profound, a deep, unspoken recognition of the divine feminine that exists both within her and within him. This recognition stirs his soul. It stirs his ego. It challenges his identity. For as much as a man may try to deny it, he is forever tethered to his unconscious. And that unconscious at its core yearns for the balance of the feminine. But only when she is not so readily available, when she is not giving herself away, can he truly feel her power. You might wonder, if this is the case, why do men still fall for women who are not emotionally available or who seem out of reach? The answer lies in the psychological mechanism of projection. Men project their unacknowledged desires, their unsatisfied needs, onto women who embody the very qualities they lack or fear within themselves. A woman who understands this dynamic does not try to fulfill his projections. She simply exists as a mirror, reflecting back to him the facets of himself that he has either forgotten or been too afraid to face. She becomes his emotional catalyst, stirring up both longing and fear. His desire for her is not only a yearning for companionship or love, it is a desire to confront the parts of himself he has repressed. In this sense, the forbidden quality of her allure lies in her ability to reflect his own shadow back at him. It is the quiet tension that exists when two people stand at the edge of vulnerability, when one does not chase the other, but both are pulled into a dance of discovery, a dance where ego and soul meet, collide, and evolve. The most dangerous woman is not the one who remains passive, waiting to be chosen. It is the woman who recognizes her own value and walks in the quiet power of her own being. She does not beg for attention, nor does she chase love. She does not perform for anyone's gaze. The man who desires her is drawn to her energy, her authenticity, her mystery. He is compelled not by her outward appearance, but by the depth of her inner world, the quiet strength of a woman who knows who she is and owns every part of herself, even her darkness. This is the heart of the forbidden desire, a desire for that which cannot be controlled, that which challenges the ego. The woman who embodies this power is a force to be reckoned with. She is not afraid to face her own shadows. She is not afraid of silence, of being misunderstood, of standing alone in her truth. And in this boldness, in this self-awareness, she becomes magnetic. But make no mistake, it is not without its consequences. The man who is drawn to her is forced to confront himself in ways he may not be prepared for. He may resist it, fight it, or even attempt to change her. But the deeper the attraction, the more inevitable this confrontation becomes. He may feel the rush of desire, the pull of the unknown, but he will also feel fear, insecurity, and even jealousy. For the more he tries to possess her, the more he will realize that he cannot. And that, my dear, is the greatest secret of all. The forbidden desires that draw him to you are not about satisfying his needs or expectations. They are about unlocking the parts of his psyche that have long been buried, the parts that he is too afraid to confront. And in the process he will be forced to grow, to face the darkness within himself, and to reckon with his own ego. A woman who is fully aligned with her own sense of self, who does not need validation from the outside world, becomes a mirror to the man who seeks her. She becomes a reflection of his inner contradictions, of his strengths and weaknesses, his desires and his fears. And in this mirror he sees the potential for transformation, the chance to integrate his shadow and become whole. But here is where it gets truly dangerous. The more a man is drawn to the woman who embodies this power, the more he risks losing himself. He is not just falling for a woman, he is falling for a vision of himself, a version of himself that he has yet to fully realize. And this, in the end, is the ultimate form of attraction, the desire to awaken something within himself that he did not even know existed. So, the next time you wonder why he is so drawn to you, ask yourself this: is it you he wants? Or is it the part of himself that you represent? The woman who stands in her own truth, who dares to embrace both her light and her shadow, becomes a force that no man can resist, not because she plays the game of attraction, but because she is the game. The woman who embodies her own truth, who walks in the quiet power of her own being, does not chase. She does not give herself away easily, and in this she becomes something far more than a mere object of desire. She becomes a force that disrupts the natural order of things, a challenge to the ego. This is where the psychological intensity of attraction lies. It is not about playing hard to get or withholding affection to create tension. It is about embodying the archetype of the feminine that is not easily possessed, that is free from the chains of expectation and external validation. What she offers is not the illusion of perfection, but the reality of wholeness. A woman who understands both her light and her dark, and who embraces the complexities of her own psyche. This creates an irresistible magnetism. When a man encounters her, he is not merely drawn to her beauty or her charm. He is pulled into her emotional gravity, where every interaction, every glance, holds the weight of something deeper, something unknown. And in this dynamic, the most fascinating part is that the man is not just attracted to her presence but to her absence. When she chooses to step back, to remove herself from the situation, to withdraw her energy, it awakens something inside him. It is as though her very distance forces him to confront his own fears, his own insecurities. He is no longer distracted by the outward performance of affection. Instead, he is left alone with his own thoughts, his own projections, and his own desires. This is the magic of the forbidden desire. It exists not in the chase but in the lack of it. It exists in the silence, the space between the two. A woman who knows how to withhold her energy, who does not give herself away for free, holds the power of emotional alchemy. She transforms a man's desire into something far more complex. Obsession, fear, longing, and sometimes the shadow of regret. In Jungian terms, this dynamic can be seen as the interplay of the conscious and unconscious, of the ego and the shadow. The ego, with its need for control, seeks to possess, to understand, to dominate. But the shadow, that hidden part of the self, the repressed desires and untapped potential, is something far more powerful. It is the part of a man that yearns for the feminine energy that exists outside of logic and ego. This is why the woman who is fully in touch with her own shadow, who has embraced her complexity, is so deeply captivating. She becomes a reflection of the man's own repressed desires, his own unconscious fears and needs. Her power lies not in what she gives, but in what she withholds. The more she chooses to protect her energy, to remain true to herself, the more she awakens the man's deepest, most forbidden desires. These desires are not always comfortable. They are raw, primal, and often rooted in fear. But it is in confronting these fears that he has the potential for transformation. But what of the woman herself? What does she gain from this dynamic? The woman who stands in her power, who understands that her worth is not defined by his desire, is the one who gains the most. She does not seek validation from outside sources. She is not dependent on a man's approval for her sense of self-worth. This is the highest form of feminine empowerment, the ability to be emotionally detached without being emotionally cold. She does not need him to define her, to validate her existence. She simply is. This detachment does not mean she is incapable of love or intimacy. It simply means that her love is not a currency to be bartered or a tool to gain approval. She is not attached to the outcome, nor is she invested in whether he returns her affection. She is whole in herself, and it is from this place of inner wholeness that she attracts the man who is ready to confront his own shadow, to face his own fears and to grow. And when she is fully aligned with her own power, she becomes unshakable. The man who is drawn to her is forced to reckon with the fact that his desire cannot control her. He may try to mold her, to fit her into his idea of who she should be. But she will remain unchanged, unbent, because she knows her worth. She will not chase. She will not bend. She will simply choose. And in that choosing, she becomes a force that transforms not only him but herself. This, my dear, is the ultimate secret of attraction. It is not in the chase, not in the effort, but in the being. When a woman fully steps into her power and owns her own energy, she becomes irresistible. Not because she is perfect, but because she is whole. She is not chasing his approval. She is not seeking his validation. She is not performing for his gaze. She is simply being herself, unapologetically and unconditionally. And in this truth, she draws to her the man who is ready to embrace his own darkness, his own contradictions, and his own transformation. The forbidden desire that draws a man to you is not rooted in the illusion of perfection. It is rooted in the recognition that you are whole, that you are enough, that you are not defined by his need or desire. You are defined by your own sense of self. And when you stand in this truth, the world, and the men in it, cannot help but be drawn to you. As the layers of psychological tension unfold between the two, something powerful emerges, a space of transformation. When a woman stands firm in her own power, her attraction to the man is not based on need or expectation, but rather on the quiet allure of authenticity. She is not performing, not pretending, but being. And in this state of being, she becomes a mirror that reflects back to him not just the parts of himself he knows, but the parts he has yet to understand. The forbidden desire, the one that pulls him in deeper and deeper, is not a simple pursuit of pleasure or possession. It is a deeper calling, a beckoning from the unconscious to explore what lies hidden in the shadows of the self. Jung spoke of the process of individuation, a journey of self-discovery that is often uncomfortable, filled with pain and confrontation with one's inner darkness. The woman who is rooted in her own power, who has done the work to confront her shadow, to embrace her complexities, becomes the catalyst for this very process within a man. In her presence, he is confronted not with a perfect woman, but with a reflection of his own unconscious desires, fears, and needs. And in this confrontation there is no escape. The pull is magnetic because it is tied not to a superficial need for validation, but to the deepest parts of his soul that yearn for integration. When a man finds himself drawn to such a woman, he is not merely enchanted by her beauty or her charm. He is entranced by the unknown she embodies. She is a symbol of the things he has repressed, the aspects of himself he has not yet dared to face. Her silence, her emotional distance, becomes a reflection of his own inner emptiness, an emptiness he is either too afraid to acknowledge or too ashamed to confront. And so, his desire intensifies. He seeks to possess her, to make her his, but this desire is never fully satisfied. The more he seeks to control her, the more he is confronted with the realization that he cannot. And in this realization, a deeper longing arises, a longing to not just possess her, but to understand himself through her. This is the psychological complexity at play in forbidden desire. It is never just about the other person. It is always, at its core, about the self, about the deep, unconscious forces that drive both the man and the woman. It is a dance of projection and reflection, a game of mirrors where neither participant is fully aware of the roles they are playing. The woman who has embraced her own shadow becomes a mirror that reflects back his darkness, and it is in this reflection that his true self, the parts of him he has kept hidden from the world, begins to emerge. But the deeper this attraction grows, the more dangerous it becomes. For the man, this is a confrontation with his own unconscious, with the parts of himself that he has denied or repressed. It is in these moments of deep psychological intimacy that he may find himself unraveling, confronting the wounds, the insecurities, the traumas that he has kept buried. He may feel the urge to run, to pull away, to retreat into the safety of what he knows. But the forbidden allure of the woman who embodies her own power, who stands in her own truth, keeps him tethered. It is a pull that he cannot resist, even if it threatens to shatter the fragile walls of his ego. This dynamic is not one of simple attraction. It is a dance of the soul. It is a test and initiation. The man who is drawn to a woman in this way is being called to awaken to his own wholeness, to integrate his own shadow, to confront the parts of himself that have long been neglected. But this process of self-discovery is never easy. It is filled with discomfort, with doubt, with fear. The woman who stands in her own power is not the one who makes it easy for him. She is not the one who caters to his ego or feeds his need for validation. She is the one who challenges him to grow, to evolve, to step into his own truth. The forbidden desires that draw him to her are not about surface-level attraction or fleeting pleasures. They are about something much deeper, the desire to become something more. The man who is drawn to a woman like this is being pulled into a psychological crucible where his identity, his beliefs, his very sense of self is being tested. And it is in this testing that he will either grow or retreat, either integrate his shadow or remain in the safety of the known. But the woman who knows her worth, who is not afraid to embrace both her light and her darkness, has no need to chase. She understands that true power lies in the ability to choose, not to chase. She does not need his validation or approval. She is whole in herself, and it is from this place of inner wholeness that she attracts the man who is ready to confront his own shadows, who is ready to evolve into something greater. And in this choice she becomes free. Free from the need for external validation, free from the constraints of societal expectations, free from the desire to be anything other than what she is. The forbidden desire that draws a man to her is not something she seeks or chases. It is something that comes to her naturally, drawn by the quiet power of her own self-acceptance. She is a force that cannot be controlled, a reflection of the deepest parts of his own unconscious. And in this power she finds her own freedom. In the end, the woman who knows her worth does not chase. She does not perform. She does not mold herself to fit anyone's idea of who she should be. She simply chooses. And in that choice, she becomes a force that transforms not only herself but everyone around her. The moment a woman steps into her true power, the world begins to shift around her. She no longer lives to please, to perform, or to chase. Her energy is not spent seeking validation from the outside world, but rather, it is spent in quiet self-possession, rooted in the depths of her own soul. This is the moment when the forbidden desires begin to weave their deepest pull. The man who encounters her is not merely drawn to what he can see. He is drawn to the mystery that surrounds her, to the essence of her being. She becomes a puzzle, a challenge, a mirror of what he has lost or has yet to find within himself. But make no mistake, this is not a game for the faint of heart. This dynamic, this magnetic attraction comes with a price. It is a price paid in vulnerability, in shadow work, in moments of fear and disillusionment. For the man who is drawn to this kind of woman is being called to confront his own darkness, the parts of himself that he has long avoided or buried. The journey is not one of instant gratification. It is a slow, steady unraveling of the self. And it is precisely in this unraveling that the forbidden desire takes root. For the woman who knows her worth, the desire is not hers to chase. It is not a pursuit she embarks upon to win someone's affection, but rather a natural consequence of being fully in alignment with her own energy. This is the paradox of true feminine power. It is not about effort or striving. It is about being, about allowing oneself to become fully present in one's own body, mind, and soul. And when she does this, when she aligns herself with her truth, she becomes irresistible not because she tries to be, but because her energy shifts, and the man is drawn to her not out of need, but out of an unconscious recognition of the divine feminine that resides within her. Attraction in this context is a deep psychological phenomenon. It is not about the chase or the conquest, but about the unconscious forces at play. The man is pulled in because he sees something in her that is not easily accessible, something that feels both alluring and dangerous. Her very presence stirs up his own repressed desires, his hidden vulnerabilities, and his buried fears. In her, he sees the reflection of his own potential, and yet, he is also terrified of the transformation that such a realization might bring. But here is the twist. As much as a man may long for her, as much as he is drawn to the forbidden aspects of her energy, the true power of attraction lies in the woman's ability to choose her engagement. She does not give herself away freely. She holds her energy back, not out of malice, but because she understands the weight of her own value. She does not need anyone else to define her. She already knows who she is. She understands that when she is fully in her own power, she cannot be controlled, nor does she wish to be. And this, more than anything, is what calls to the man, the fact that she remains untamed, a force beyond his reach. This is where the man's desire takes on a different quality. It moves beyond the superficial and becomes an obsession, a need to possess that which cannot be possessed. The more he seeks to control her, the more she slips through his fingers. The deeper he falls into her spell, the more he is forced to confront the truth of his own limitations. For he cannot control the wildness that resides in her, the quiet power that exists beyond the ego's grasp. And this, in its own right, is intoxicating. Jung's concept of the anima, the feminine aspect within the male unconscious, is central to this dynamic. The anima is not just a reflection of the woman. It is a symbol of the man's deepest, most repressed desires, the parts of him that are soft, vulnerable, and connected to the unconscious. When a man encounters a woman who is fully in touch with her own femininity, with both her light and her shadow, she awakens the anima within him. But this awakening is not without turmoil. It challenges his ego, his identity, and his sense of self. And in this confrontation he may either grow or retreat. For the woman, the power is not in trying to awaken the anima, but in simply embodying the truth of who she is. She does not need to chase or manipulate. She does not need to fix or save. She simply needs to be. And when she is fully in her own energy, the man is drawn to her, not because of anything she does, but because of what she is. She becomes the embodiment of his own unconscious desires, and he cannot help but be pulled toward her. The forbidden desires that draw him to her are not about the superficial or the immediate. They are about something much deeper, a desire to confront the parts of himself that he has avoided for so long. And in this confrontation, both the man and the woman have the potential for growth. It is a dance of shadow and light, of ego and unconscious, of transformation and stagnation. But the woman who knows her worth will not be pulled into this dynamic out of fear or desperation. She will not give herself away, nor will she chase. She will simply choose. And in that choice she will become free. Free from the need for external validation, free from the constraints of societal expectations, and free from the idea that her worth is defined by anyone else. The woman who knows her worth does not need anyone's approval to feel complete. She is already whole. And it is from this place of wholeness that she attracts the man who is ready to face his own darkness, to confront the parts of himself that have been long neglected, and to step into his own truth. In the end, the forbidden desire that draws him to her is not about possession or conquest. It is about awakening to the fullness of oneself, to the depths of the unconscious, and to the transformative power of embracing both light and shadow. In the quiet dance between the two, a profound transformation occurs, not only between them but within each individual. The woman, who stands in the fullness of her own self-acceptance, becomes a mirror that reflects back the man's deepest, most hidden desires. These desires are not merely physical, they are psychological and emotional, a yearning for something far deeper than the fleeting pleasure of momentary affection. They are desires for growth, for wholeness, for integration. The forbidden desire he feels for her is not about what she can do for him, nor is it about her ability to fit into his ideal of the perfect woman. It is about the unconscious call to be more than what he is, to face the parts of himself he has ignored or repressed. It is a call to break free from the constraints of his ego and confront the raw, unpolished truth of who he is, and who he could become. This is the pull of the forbidden. It is the yearning for the unknown, the desire for self-transformation, and the invitation to embrace one's shadow. For a man to fall deeply into this kind of attraction, he must be willing to confront the most uncomfortable aspects of himself, the parts that have been buried under layers of social conditioning, ego, and fear. The more he desires the woman who embodies her own power, the more he is forced to reckon with his own limitations, his own wounds, and the parts of himself he has denied. And this is where the danger lies, in the intensity of the confrontation. For the woman who knows her worth, who embodies the deep feminine energy, she is not just an object of desire. She is a force of nature. She becomes the mirror that shatters the illusions of control and expectation. But as much as this truth can be liberating, it is also painful. The deeper the man's attraction, the more he will be forced to face his own insecurities, his own fears of inadequacy, his own vulnerability. The woman in her power is not there to rescue him or to ease his pain. She is simply there to be herself, to embody her own energy, and in doing so she awakens the deepest parts of him. She does not fix him. She does not need to. She simply chooses to stand in her own truth. And this choice, the act of choosing to remain true to oneself regardless of the external pull, is where the true power lies. The woman who has embraced both her light and her shadow becomes a woman who cannot be tamed, who cannot be controlled. She becomes the embodiment of freedom, and it is this freedom that makes her so irresistible. The man is drawn to her not because he wants to possess her, but because he wants to understand the mystery that she represents, the parts of himself that he has yet to fully embrace. But this dance is never one-sided. The man who is drawn to her, who is captivated by the forbidden desire she evokes, is on his own journey of transformation. His desire for her is not simply a desire for her as a person, but a desire for the self that he has yet to discover. And in this journey he must ask himself, can he face the truth of who he is? Can he embrace his own shadow, his own fears, and his own wounds? This is the essence of attraction in its most powerful form, the call to grow, to evolve, to become more. The woman who stands firm in her own power, who refuses to bend to the expectations of others, becomes a catalyst for this growth. She does not do the work for him. She simply exists as a reminder of what he has yet to confront, and what he has the potential to become. In this way, the forbidden desires that draw a man to a woman are not about possession, but about transformation. He desires her because she represents the parts of himself that he has kept hidden. She becomes a symbol of his own potential, of the growth that is waiting for him, but only if he is willing to face the darkness within. And this is where the profound power of the feminine lies. It lies in her ability to simply be, to be in touch with her own energy, her own authenticity, and her own truth. She does not need to perform. She does not need to manipulate. She does not need to chase. She simply needs to stand in her own power, and in doing so she becomes a mirror that reflects back the depths of his soul. The man who desires her is not just longing for her presence. He is longing for something deeper, the awakening of his own truth. And it is in this awakening that he finds the courage to confront his own limitations, to face his own fears, and to step into the fullness of who he is meant to be. This is the heart of the forbidden desire. It is not about fulfilling the ego's desires, but about confronting the unconscious, about facing the parts of oneself that have long been ignored or suppressed. It is about stepping into the unknown, into the shadow, and finding the strength to transform. And this, ultimately, is where true power lies. Not in chasing the desire, but in standing firm in one's own truth. The woman who knows her worth does not chase, does not seek validation, and does not perform. She simply chooses. And in that choice, she becomes a force of nature that no man, no ego, and no projection can ever truly possess. When a woman embraces her full, authentic self, she unlocks a power within her that is irresistible. It is a power not born of manipulation, but of self-awareness and self-possession. And it is this power that makes her truly dangerous to the man who is ready to face his own shadow. The forbidden desires that draw him to her are not just about what she can give him. They are about what she makes him confront within himself. And in this confrontation, both the man and the woman have the potential to become more than they ever thought possible. And in the end, it is not about the chase. It is not about the pursuit. It is about the quiet, unwavering choice to stand in your truth, to be whole, to be free, to be unapologetically you. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.